courtesy of Athlon Sports. Sophie Cunningham makes Indiana Fever announcement on Sunday. All right. Sophie Cunningham had some exciting news about Indiana Fever teammate Lexie Hall. Okay. Oh boy. Here it says, there is currently a lot of uncertainty surrounding Sophie Cunningham's
body language in professional sports often reveals the dark, uncomfortable truths that carefully crafted press releases are designed to hide. And what we are watching unfold right now behind the scenes in Indiana is quietly turning into one of the most fascinating, high-stakes free agency situations in the history of the WNBA. Two crucial pieces of the Indiana Fever's roster, Sophie Cunningham and Lexie Hull, are about to sit down together in front of live microphones on Cunningham's podcast. Under normal circumstances, this would just be two teammates sharing funny locker room stories. But the timing of this specific conversation is absolutely explosive. Both players are unrestricted free agents, staring down the barrel of massive career uncertainty. Neither one is guaranteed a roster spot next season. And just days ago, the face of the franchise, Caitlin Clark, publicly declared that retaining veteran guard Kelsey Mitchell is the team's absolute top priority. Not Cunningham, not Hull, Mitchell. So when these two best friends sit down to broadcast their thoughts to the world, what exactly are they about to reveal?
Cunningham will likely be left unprotected in the expansion draft. So that is another key thing to pay attention to here as we kind of go forward. Sophie Cunningham is not going to be protected in the expansion draft. So keep that in mind. All right. Here it says, Cunningham joined the Fever.
To understand the sheer gravity of this impending podcast, we have to look at the brutal, unforgiving facts surrounding Sophie Cunningham's situation. When Cunningham arrived in Indiana via a complex multi-team trade during the 2024 offseason, she was brought in to be the ultimate gritty glue piece. She did exactly what was asked of her, averaging a highly efficient 8.6 points, 3.5 rebounds, and knocking down 1.7 three-pointers per game in solid rotation minutes. Those are not the flashy, headline-grabbing numbers of a franchise superstar, but they represent the exact caliber of reliable, floor-spacing role player that legitimate championship contenders desperately need. She was thriving in her role, providing the necessary perimeter defense and shooting to keep opposing defenses honest.
Rebounds, 1.2 assists, 1 steal, and 1.7 triples in 25 minutes per game. Unfortunately, Cunningham's debut campaign in Indiana was cut short by a season-ending knee injury. She played 30 games before tearing the MCL in her right knee. All right, here it says, one of Cunningham's closest friends on the squad is Lexie Hall, and this is where things get a bit.
But then, absolute disaster struck. Her highly promising debut campaign in Indiana was violently cut short by a season-ending knee injury. She played exactly 30 games before suffering a devastating torn MCL in her right knee. In the ruthless business of professional basketball, suffering a major structural injury during a contract year is the absolute worst-case scenario. It instantly vaporizes your negotiating leverage, scares off potential suitors, and completely changes the financial trajectory of your career.
This whole expansion situation, this whole free agency situation, Kelsey Mitchell, Caitlin Clark coming out and saying Kelsey Mitchell is the priority, not them two. Okay, hey, I'm sure they're going to address it, okay? Cunningham said it's going to be so fun, declared after they introduced Hull as their special guest.
Our guest today is a professional basketball player, currently in the WNBA. She first made her name as a standout college athlete. Off the court, she's a fan favorite for her leadership and the way.
And that devastating injury brings us to the harsh, calculating reality of the Indiana Fever's front office. The salary cap situation in Indiana right now is incredibly suffocating. According to the highly public statement made by Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell is the undisputed #1 priority in free agency. You have to understand that a player of Clark's magnitude does not make statements like that casually or accidentally. It was a deliberate, highly calculated message sent to the front office, and it established a very clear, very public financial hierarchy. As it stands right now, only 3 players are genuinely guaranteed to be untouchable building blocks for the 2026 season: Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Michaela Thompson. Every single other player on that roster, including highly impactful veterans like Cunningham and Hull, is currently negotiating from a terrifying position of complete uncertainty.
All right, Lexie Hall is on the show. What'd he say? What Dr. Lee say on Drumline? Eyes front? Eyes front. I'm going to be paying attention to this. I want to know if you guys are going to address what the hell is going on in free agency, okay? Do you guys feel like a priority? Are y'all looking for as much money as y'all can get? Are y'all willing to take a little? Look, I want to know if you guys are going to address it. And Sophie Cunningham has not let me down yet when it comes to addressing things on her podcast. Here it says live.
But the salary cap squeeze is only half of the nightmare currently keeping these players awake at night. The WNBA expansion draft is rapidly approaching, completely altering the landscape of the league. With new franchises building their rosters from absolute scratch, current teams are forced to submit highly restricted protection lists. The brutal mathematical reality of these lists means that playoff-caliber teams cannot shield their entire core. If you are Sophie Cunningham, sit with that reality for a second. You are staring down months of grueling rehabilitation for a torn MCL. You are an unrestricted free agent with zero guaranteed money waiting for you. You just heard your franchise superstar publicly lobby for a different teammate to get paid, and you know with near absolute certainty that the front office is going to leave you completely unprotected and exposed to the expansion draft. That is the definition of a career crisis.
Okay, according to the Post, the new episode will drop Monday, and both Cunningham and Hall were clearly excited in the announcement video. Much like Cunningham, there is no guarantee that Hall will be back on the Fever roster next season. She too is an unrestricted free agent, along with all but 3 players from last season. So this is going to be, let me see, this isn't up yet. This
intense, suffocating pressure is exactly why the announcement of this specific podcast episode is so incredibly significant. Sophie Cunningham recently took to social media to reveal that Lexie Hull will be the highly anticipated next guest on her show, Live from the Bracket. It is a limited series that Cunningham hosts alongside her longtime friend, Wes Wilson, perfectly timed to capture the massive audience of March Madness. The short promotional video showed both players smiling, laughing, and clearly excited about the upcoming conversation. But in the cutthroat world of sports media, the subtext is what truly matters. These are 2 best friends, 2 unrestricted free agents facing the exact same professional crossroads, actively choosing to have a highly public, recorded conversation during the most vulnerable, uncertain week of their entire lives.
At the end of the day, that's what we want to know. We want to know, are y'all looking to come back? Are y'all looking to get as much money as possible? I mean, what is it? It says right now, only Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Michaela Thompson are guaranteed to return in 2026. The Fever's front office has its work cut out for it once the free agency window officially opens in April. Okay, so listen.
Cunningham has never been shy about stating that she considers Hull to be her absolute best friend on the team. That chemistry is undeniably genuine. You can clearly see it in how they relentlessly defend each other on the hardwood, how they interact in the background of locker room interviews, and how they constantly hype each other up on social media. But friendship and multi-million-dollar business are 2 entirely different animals in professional sports. Right now, both of these athletes are staring down the exact same brutal reality. The Indiana Fever simply cannot afford to keep everyone. Difficult, heartbreaking choices have to be made by the general manager. And the terrifying truth is that those final decisions might not include both of them. Depending on how the math shakes out, it might not include either of them. What makes this impending broadcast so incredibly explosive is Sophie Cunningham's established reputation in the media. She does not operate like a highly polished, media-trained robot. She refuses to shy away from controversial topics. She addresses the painful rumors directly, and she actively asks the kind of blunt questions that make front office executives incredibly uncomfortable. That authentic, unfiltered approach is exactly how she built her massive audience. So, when she finally sits down across from Lexie Hull, days after being subtly pushed down the priority list, we are absolutely not going to get safe, recycled corporate talking points. We are going to get an unprecedented, raw look at what it actually feels like to be treated as expendable in the WNBA. The timing of this podcast drop is a brilliant, highly calculated strategic maneuver. It releases on Monday, sitting perfectly on the timeline right before free agency officially explodes in April, and just days before the terrifying expansion draft protection lists are formally submitted to the league office. Furthermore, the ink is barely dry on the newly finalized WNBA collective bargaining agreement, which completely shifted the rules regarding salary structures, revenue sharing, and player movement. Absolutely everything in the league is currently in a state of massive, unpredictable flux. And in that precise moment of maximum chaos, two highly valuable role players are seizing control of their own narrative. This isn't a coincidence. It is a masterclass in modern athlete leverage. There are massive, franchise-altering questions that absolutely must be addressed during this broadcast. First and foremost, do Cunningham and Hull actually feel valued by the Indiana Fever organization? Caitlin Clark advocating for Kelsey Mitchell makes total, undeniable basketball sense. Mitchell averaged a blistering 19.2 points per game last season, and has proven to be an elite, reliable scoring partner for Clark in the backcourt. But human emotions do not care about statistics. What does that highly public endorsement actually do to the psychological morale of the rest of the locker room? How do you step onto the court and sacrifice your body for a franchise when you are explicitly, publicly told that another player is the ultimate priority? Then, you have to look at the cold, hard financial reality of the Caitlin Clark effect. This is the most uncomfortable conversation that needs to happen behind closed doors. Both Cunningham and Hull saw their global profiles skyrocket astronomically simply by sharing the court with Clark. Hull's personal social media following exploded overnight, landing her brand deals she never previously had access to. Cunningham became a massive, recognizable fan favorite. They were vital pieces of the most watched, most heavily scrutinized team in the history of women's basketball. But does that massive surge in Instagram followers and television ratings actually translate into a larger guaranteed contract from the front office? Or were they simply lucky beneficiaries of the Clark halo effect, meaning their actual basketball market value immediately plummets the second they put on a different uniform? This ultimately forces the biggest question of their careers. What do they actually want out of this league? If they prioritize securing the biggest possible paycheck to ensure their long-term financial security, they absolutely need to test the waters of free agency or actively welcome a fresh start with an expansion franchise. If their ultimate goal is to win a WNBA championship, taking a significant hometown discount to stay in Indiana alongside Clark and Boston makes the most strategic sense. But if they are tired of sitting in the shadows and desperately want the opportunity to be featured high-volume players rather than complementary defensive stoppers, they have to leave the Fever. These are three entirely different paths, and they cannot choose all of them. This is exactly why the front office in Indiana is going to be heavily monitoring every single second of this podcast. Athletes almost never have honest, unfiltered public conversations about their contract negotiations while the ink is still dry. It is widely considered a massive violation of the unwritten rules of sports business. It can permanently damage fragile relationships with general managers and create incredibly toxic, awkward dynamics inside the locker room. But by hosting this conversation now, Cunningham and Hull are putting the pressure entirely back on the organization. If they express deep frustration about being undervalued, it forces the Fever to issue a response. If they casually mention looking forward to exploring other cities, it significantly accelerates the timeline for the general manager to make an offer. Every single word, every pause, and every laugh will be highly calculated. So, when you tune into this episode on Monday, you have to listen like a scout. Do not just listen to the words they are saying, listen to the underlying tone. Are they speaking with the optimism of players who secretly know a deal is already in the works? Or is there a bitter, defiant edge to their voices? Pay incredibly close attention to what they actively refuse to talk about, because the topics they strategically avoid are almost always the ones causing the most friction behind the scenes. The WNBA is rapidly changing, and players are no longer waiting for traditional reporters to tell their stories. They are taking the microphones, grabbing the leverage, and forcing the league to listen on their own terms.